listening to the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in, or in this case, stream in. And we're back with you for a kind of DC-dominated episode, but not DC Comics dominated. You'll understand what we're talking about as we get moving on this. This past Friday, from where we recorded this, was the premieres of both DC's League of Super Pets in the cinemas and on your Netflix, The Sandman. So there's a lot we want to talk about related media to comic books, and that's going to take a good chunk of the show. But I think we're all in agreement that these were very high-quality projects, and there's a lot we want to talk about. So that's what you're in for tonight. Yeah, we'll be talking about some comic books that we are digging, but it's going to be a bit more of a media heavy episode tonight. So
yeah, which isn't a problem. I mean, we all like movies and the TV and the books.
Yeah, I just get nervous when we did it because our last episode was Thor. So
yeah.
There's
a lot. It's a summer.
I always like to go back to the comics, but I think these two projects that I just mentioned are just so so damn good. It's so damn good.
Well, and it is sort of like the standard summer. That's when all the when most of the superhero movies drop, and other superhero shows like The Boys and things all kind of premiere. So whatever the season is. So yeah, and then we'll probably do the same thing again when CW brings back whatever's left of their superhero shows.
I was going to say it's also when the movies get dropped.
Yeah.
Okay, speaking of things being dropped, how about things that you have picked up?
Oh, look at you with the clever there. The Passover. Yeah, it's a time for geek gets. I'll go first because, gee, I wonder what my geek gets are. I really wonder. Okay. In the 1980s, what is, I would say, known as one of, however you look at, one of the 5 best toy lines was available for 3 years. From 1984 to 1986, there was the Superpowers line from Kenner based on the DC Comics properties. And these were amazing. Now, at the time, I was just getting out of the teenagerism. I was just going into college. So me buying toys was a big step, but I did it. I worked at Toys R Us for one day, and that was enough to say I never wanted to step into another Toys R Us for as anything but a civilian again. But that was when I first saw. Yeah, well, it was like one of these things. Like this is when you were actually able to get working papers at I guess 16 in Jersey. That's where it is. And a friend of mine had set me up for a job at, if you remember, Bradley's. Anybody have those in their area?
Vaguely, I remember seeing it because
it was the same corporate parent as Stop and Shop and Medimart. If any of those names ring
Stop
for
and
you.
Shop, Giant.
But there was a delay when they were actually getting off of a hiring freeze from Bradley's, so I wanted to start working, so I got a job at Toys R Us, and I lasted one day. After that one night, I was like, this is awful.
You didn't even get to use your discount, man.
There is no discount. There was no discount because there was no discount at Toys R Us if you worked there.
Nope.
What? How?
Because the toys are so drastically discounted that it would be unfair to our customers if someone who worked for the company had an advantage, or they had some kind of ridiculous.
Absolutely.
Well, you did have a bit of an advantage, and that was if there was something that was coming out, you could purchase before it goes on the shelf.
But
as long as it's available for a sale, that's it.
Right. But this was well before people were into that activity, or at least admitted to being into that activity. This was 1984. So, I think probably Cabbage Patch Kids were like the first like insane collectible that kind of dynamic was in place where somebody took advantage of that situation. So that was like around that time, but it wasn't like, I think the peak of that probably was the Phantom Menace,
Yeah.
The peak of that where people were like literally getting jobs just to get the toys. So
well, it makes
when I was working for them.
It makes sense that it was 1984 because there is nothing more Orwellian than having to put up with a building full of other people's crotch goblins and not getting a 10% discount. That's bullshit.
So anyway, that was my introduction to the superpowers, and I was like, that was a little bit before I got back into comics the next year, and I just kept going like, oh, let me check the action figure. Let me straighten out the action figure aisle again. And within a few days, I got it. Like I think I got Hawkman and Superman because I was just blown away that they actually had a Hawkman figure. And then nothing, and then the big restart the next year. So McFarlane Toys has revived the line. There've been like small revivals through Matty Collector and through Gentle Giant, but nothing in the actual size format. Also, Figure Toys Company has some of their branding as superpowers, but they introduced a line of 4 figures. So here's Superman, and for the first time on the superpowers line, the John Stewart Green Lantern, and this sculpt is beautiful.
Good for them. Good job.
And we also have what a toy line be without a Batman. So we have the first Batman figure of the new superpowers line. So, and I say the first because let's face it. And though people are bitching that it's more New 52-ish than anything else, they have Darkseid, and another, I think, just a beautiful sculpt. And as you see behind me here, the 2 vehicles that have come out, the Supermobile and the Batwing. And interestingly, the Batwing was never part of the original Superpowers line. So that's the first time we've had, I got to point in the right direction, that we had a Batwing, and the scale is a little different from the original figures, but in like the people bitching, they're just crazy. Nothing makes them happy. But the idea of going into a retail store and buying superpowers figures again, oh baby, it was so fulfilling going up to that counter and just like swipe, beep, beep, and then seeing on the receipt superpower. So that's my geek gets. There's nothing better as far as I'm concerned of having superpowers. There is a second wave coming, and the second wave, according to McFarlane's teases, will consist of Wonder Woman, Flash, and the Batman Who Laughs. And I think that's going to be a really interesting figure. And
it'll be pointy. I can bet that it's going to be very pointy as a figure.
Yeah.
We have a couple people who have joined us. So David Toby, greetings, gentle folk.
The Koala of Comics.
Koala of Comics, big huggles. And then we also have John Runyon, recently married John Runyon. Congratulations,
John, on your nuptials.
Saying comic book, the nuptials.
Yeah.
Congratulations. And he says, Comic Book Bears assemble. # Hot Bear Summer shirts are in development. Ooh.
Good for him. And I think we've got some very hot shirts on tonight. Look at us.
Yeah.
I see Steve with a nice Peacemaker shirt. I see Caleb there.
Official DC merch. So.
Nice. And I see Caleb there with sporting the Tom of Finland there.
Yep.
And I'm hotter than hell.
Knights in Satan's service, I see. Well, filth.
Yeah.
Was it Knights or was it Kings? That might be a recall.
Nights.
So I grew up like my dad, who, again, like you can't listen to certain songs because if you play them backwards, the devil's in the voices. But like literally, that's also like Hotel California. He's convinced that that's one of those songs. But like it was always Kings in Satan's service. It was never Knights. I wonder if that's like a colloquial thing.
Yeah.
Well, maybe he just kind of like elevated them.
They kind of
just like, you know what? They're not even knights. They're even better than knights. The Kings in Satan's service. Excellent. Because
Kings, I tell you.
Your dad turns into a 1930s gangster, I'm sure. That's what I'm guessing.
Kings, I tell you.
Kings, I tell you. That's awesome.
I can't believe I'm talking to you guys, and there's superpowers merch.
Yeah,
behind
superpowers
it
stuff.
That isn't from the 80s. I love it.
I can't believe they're still in the box.
Yeah.
That was
You're not
tough.
playing with them right now.
That's tough, but my thing is, initially I bought those page punchers, the little figures with the comics. Yeah. And I bought one to keep in mint and one to open, becoming guardians of the graphic novels over there on the shelves. And since they have the comic book, so I thought that was my plan. But that was well before we even knew the superpowers line was happening.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of came out of nowhere. So I don't think, at least for the figures, they're maybe these won't be open, but there will be a version that's open. I'll pick them up in a sensible manner. In terms of toy acquisitions, one of our other properties that we're talking about, League of Super Pets, I was planning to get the Fisher-Price line on that, but between Black Adam, Batman, there's Black Adam pops up there. That's just too much.
Too many
time
toys.
and Alan. So.
Not enough time to play with them all.
All right. Well, enough about me. Enough about the night in service wearing shirt too. So Steve, tell us about some of your geek gets if you got any.
I don't got no geek gets. I barely left the house in the past 2 weeks. I've had to take care of these three technical pets. They're around here somewhere.
Technical
dogs.
pets.
I've got a cat. I got dogs. I got pets. They're not pets. They are basically like my bosses, my employers at this point. So barely any time to leave the house. But I did get some new replacement brushes for my Sonic Care, so I guess maybe it's not as geeky.
Can you at least put like a Spider-Man sticker on them or something?
I might. I have plenty of stickers. That's one good thing I do have. Plenty of stickers.
Rob just got a new Sonic Care too. I guess it's that time of season. Remember how expensive they used to be? Oh my God! The first one I got.
Still are. The brush heads still are, unless you get the
nothing like they were though. I mean, there was a point the brush heads were $50 a piece when they were first introduced. No. There's nothing like they were. But... anyway, over to Caleb.
Well, I don't have anything as cool as oral hygiene to talk about. But I did pick up a few
don't
things.
All have.
I got a little old, a little new, and a couple things that are blue. So I'll start with the old. Wouldn't be a comic book bears without some vinyl. Appetite for Destruction, Volume 2. Sorry about the glare. It's one of the things that's blue. I have the first one, so I had to get the second one. I've been waiting on it, and it was waiting on me when I got home from vacation. So this has some of the most amazing GNR songs on it. It's got Civil War, got So Fine, Estranged is on here. It's just
it should be Mine is on there, right?
Hang on. Yes, yep, You Should Be Mine is on here. So Coma is one of my favorite GNR songs, and it's on I think the first album. Or is it on Appetite or is it on? Ooh, I'm failing here.
I listen to 2 a lot more than 1.
Yeah. Oh, I mean it's got Civil War.
I think the world was like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so a little something else that I got is a little Matthew Allison that I got in. I got the I backed it, kicked it on Kickstarter, and it's the entire Cancor collection. It finally got released. I know a bunch of our mutual friends got this, so I was happy to pick this up. I have not read it yet.
Gorgeous.
It's on the list. And then something brand new that actually ties in to this episode, and I know that Bill saw it, and I tried to go back and get Bill one of these, but they didn't have them anymore. So I got to convince my better half to let me send this to you, but it's Krypto, the super dog. So it was really cool. So the theater that I go to, and we actually got this when we went to see Thor, not when we went to see the movie that we are going to talk about here in a little bit. But they had both Krypto, they had Ace, and for those of you who are listening, they're these little bitty kind of plush animals. They look like they'd be in a claw machine, and they probably will end up in a claw machine before it's all said and done with. But he's adorable. He's got his little golden collar on, and he's got a cape. And so they had Ace the Bat Hound, they had Krypto, and they had the Wonder Pig. They didn't have any of the other ones for some reason, but it was really cool. I didn't get the other 2, and I was hoping I would be able to. But yeah, these really cute little, and it's the ears that get me because they just little ears. And
so floppy.
It just looks at it. Look, it loves you. So yeah, that's my geek gets. I got a little audio, a little book, and a little toy. So
awesome,
nice. All right, well, I guess we can start off the show by talking about some of the things that I teased, and I can think of nobody better to start off the Sandman conversation than the original Vertigo kid, Steve. So,
well,
where do you
want
to
talk
start?
about Sandman? We could talk about Sandman, or we could talk about a couple little news bits.
All right, you know what? You convinced me. Let's talk about some news because there was some big news.
Yeah, well, and it's kind of like we'll start on a down note, and then we'll talk about Sandman. So, to hint,
right, go ahead.
To hint how well.
What's your news then, Steve? What's your news?
So basically the big thing. The big thing is WB Discovery or WB Disco have been making some very interesting decisions, and not exactly very popular decisions especially with DC fans. Related to HBO Max, as well as the movies and series that they had in development. The completely finished, or mostly finished film, Batgirl, has been permanently shelved. So they're going to take that as a write-off because they didn't think, well, semi-permanently, at least for the next 18 months. For next 18 months minimum, which is how long that they need to have it not released in order to make the money, or get the tax credit off of that. But that really pissed a lot of people off because it was done with just need for some post-production stuff, and they just didn't think that it was going to be part of what they have planned for the DC movie brand. They didn't want to release it to HBO Max. They didn't think it was good enough for the movies, for movie theaters, so they just went, out you go. And this kind of put a lot of other things that were kind of on the burner in question, such as the Blue Beetle movie that was supposed to start production.
And finished production.
Things too.
Yeah.
Blue Beetle?
Finished production. Yes.
Finished. Oh.
They were
in post-production then.
Yeah, they were in post.
Yeah.
Yeah, so... Yeah.
Apart from the CGI, it was only a 6-week shoot.
Oh, really? It was that short?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I guess that's kind of normal.
That's
so
average for like a... Yeah.
It's just frustrating. And then also, no word on the Green Lantern series. There was the Strange Adventures series.
You gotta catch up there, son. Green Lantern is in pre-production.
It is in pre-production, but no word whether they're going to continue it or actually show it.
They're having a table read tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what does that mean? They've had 2 finished movies, and they canceled them. So I'm going to hold my expectations here.
There's stuff going on there, yeah.
Oh, there's stuff going on. Like, they were already writing scripts or in the middle of turning in scripts for Strange Adventures when they got the can, according to Kevin Smith. So it's just, there's a lot of stuff that they had in production that they're just slowly shutting down. And so I don't really trust them to make any fan-based decisions for a while. Yeah. I think it's all going to be about money for the time being until they make back all the money, all the debt that they took on, which again, they took on all this debt, and so they're cutting costs. And I just don't want to see HBO Max to be, the new home of shitty reality TV like Discovery Plus tends to be. We'll see.
The deeper nerd part, and I mean nerd with like a comic nerd, just like push up my glasses nerd part of it, is that they. So just what you said about the debt, though. So there's rumors, there's at least the idea that they're doing this because they can claim it as a tax write-off if they don't send it anywhere else. And that's where I'm kind of like you. I don't know that I don't think it's going to get shipped to anybody else. I don't know if they'll ever pick it back up because I know in order for a tax write-off, they can't sell it, right? They can't claim it as a loss, and then they can't give it away. So I don't know if they'll ever be able to capitalize on it or not. So, but that's what they're doing.
After an 18-month period, I think 18 months is like.
Then it has a very different tax status.
Okay.
Yeah. So then they could either release it or they could.
And they've actually created a demand for it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like a
so
cult,
maybe it is some intelligent
classic.
we're gonna make them want it by saying that they can't have it, and that could potentially be that, or it could just be the new Roger Corman Fantastic Four, and for the next 20 years we'll be seeing bootlegs of it. So
you know what really sucks though about this whole thing, like you have a movie like Batgirl that you had people work really hard on it, like the people who are in the movie have good reputations, they're like they're all by all means doing great things, and it gets shit canned. Literally at the end of production, when it's all ready to go, they've spent $90 million on it. But then we have Ezra Miller's Flash, which they still haven't made a decision on. It might still get released. And he's like got 17 million warrants, has started a cult, and just got arrested in like Vermont. And that's the one you're going to put out?
But there are some. Did you read the article in the Hollywood Reporter about their 3 possible tracks with the Flash that came out today?
Yeah, no, I didn't get a chance to read that. I saw it. I saw a blip.
They came out today, and there's one where they're just having him without any involvement, and that after this, that they would be recasting. I think if Warner's were in a little bit more solvent financial situation, I think they'd already be reshooting it with another actor.
Yeah.
I think they'd already
do a full.
That would already be in process.
And they could even explain it away by saying, "Well, it's multiverse, so
And it's Flashpoint. Hey, look, now he looks different." They can even do that at the end. The other thing with that is, of the 3 test screenings that they've had for the Flash, 2 went extremely well, and I think a lot of the decisions. That's going to color a lot of the decisions that are happening. Also, Batgirl's scores were not bad.
Yeah,
they weren't bad. They weren't explosively good, which I think
they weren't explosively good, but they weren't like unreleasable bad.
Yeah, I think if it was more over the top, like huge audience reaction, it was really whatever, then they might have at least thought a couple more seconds about possibly releasing it in a different format. It was always kind of bound for HBO Max anyway. But it might have been like HBO Max ends then for sale on VOD, or VOD first and then HBO Max. Who knows? But right now they can't do anything with it because they made that decision. They can't do anything with it for another 18 months. So,
But like I said, I think they've created a demand that wasn't even there before. Now,
probably.
And
Steve, another thing.
I just wanted to track because I wasn't following about Strange Adventures being canceled. I only found out about that just before we went on to air. I'm just trying to think of, there were cancellations prior to of the New Gods and Wonder Twins before
New Gods.
This was, and Wonder Twins was like they were like set to go.
Wonder Twins was another one that they kind of they canceled that a few, like I think at the start they came in, they're like no,
they canceled that at the start of the merger. So we're saying goodbye to Strange Adventures. The Calvin Ellis Superman, is that still in development? I love that we have a fourth co-host. I absolutely love that we have a fourth co-host in it.
She's just watching ghosts, I guess.
I'm talking about Krypto. Kind of
intently stare things. Oh, and Krypto. Yeah,
I'm talking about Krypto.
Krypto's showing interest. There you go. I know there's been some other things, but I think it was more of like, okay, these are the film projects that were going to be in movies or whatever, or things that just hadn't gotten off the ground yet. They kind of announced that pretty quickly. Because they're like, let's not do that. But then the HBO Max stuff is I think what was really kind of surprising, because they've been making a lot of changes to HBO Max, canceling things that have gone pretty far in the production process, and then also getting rid of Max originals, and not getting rid of them, but like no longer making them exclusive, and not leasing them out, but basically like allowing the rights to be shown in other streaming services or elsewhere, which is very unexpected when HBO Max was supposed to be a big contender with a lot of original series, and now we're seeing the originals kind of get pushed away or reduced. Which again, if you're heavy in debt, then you do that, or you raise your prices, like Disney Plus, which just announced today they're raising out all the prices. So, but also along with that, there's some less, I would say, financially motivated decisions in changes, and maybe more, I don't know, executive, what's that, let's do this kind of decisions, and that is changing the name of the Pennyworth series that is moving to HBO Max from Epix, and will be premiering this fall. for season 3. It's no longer just Pennyworth. It is now Pennyworth: The Origins of Batman's Butler.
Worst fucking title I've ever heard. It really is.
Just so you know, Pennyworth is about Batman's butler, but like his origins.
Off the cuff, in our conversation, I came up with a title that I think is 1,000 times better, which is Pennyworth before Batman.
Yeah,
There you go.
And I'm not in the business.
Yeah, amazing.
Anybody
they
would
should
tell
be
you
paying
that's
you the
better.
big bucks.
They should be. They really should.
well, they did the same thing with the Harley Quinn movie. I mean, they had a title that they didn't think would work, and then what was the original title of that? Something.
It was Birds of Prey.
Birds of
Just
Prey
yeah,
and
Birds of Prey.
the fantabulous emancipation of Harley Quinn.
Yeah,
Harley Quinn, which they had to. It used to be just Birds of Prey. Then they made it Birds of Prey: The Fantabulous Emancipation of Harley Quinn, and then they just basically said Harley Quinn.
Birds of Prey. Yeah.
Yeah, because people were like, "Who's a Birds of Prey?" And then it was like, "Oh, that title's too long." And then it was like, "Yeah, Harley Quinn's in it. Okay, Harley Quinn." Whatever.
and I mean, it's like a lack of leadership. I mean, they're just rudderless in their decision making. I mean, like we talked about this back with 1984 with Wonder Woman. It's like there's a lack of direction for like the entire line, and they just can't get any traction because of it. And Bill posted a meme the other day. It's just like you've got all this stuff going on. Meanwhile, Marvel's like, yeah, we like grabbed some Ant-Man and shit out of a dumpster and made it work. It's just,
look, it's just the way it is. It was, I think, if there was any sense to this, the extended universe would have started with Batman Begins.
Yeah.
That was the point where they should have started it. And there's still, as much as I like projects in the end, like the Batman and Joker, I think the very nature of cinematic series that are not part of that is confusing to civilians. Let me put it that way. And I think if anything, that's something they should try to avoid going forward. I know that we're having the second Joker, and I know that that they have greenlit the Batman too. But I think for what they want to achieve, Joker, they really what.
And with Joker, I mean, again, talking about being very sort of like outside of a cinematic universe, now you're going to be introducing a new Harley Quinn, presumably. We're not really sure 100% yet who Lady Gaga is playing. It's probably going to be Harley Quinn, but it's going to be a completely different type of Harley Quinn because it's a different Joker.
But I think they should try to avoid doing that.
Yeah,
I have a feeling with the comic books, if you notice, there's a lot that drops at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if there is some sort of reboot with the January books, since that will be the end of Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, as it is now called. Yeah. I wonder what the plans are from that point. I think having an initiative where the comics align with the other projects would be fascinating. It'd be hellish to put together. I mean, the canon end of Star Wars was working pretty well, between the books and the video games and the films and the TV. But you can tell it takes a shit ton of work. It would be very interesting if DC does something similar at that point. That's my hope. I would love to see them try to do that.
That's what I thought that they were trying to do when they got Tom King involved with the Ava DuVernay with the New God stuff. I was like, okay, so they've got their Eisner-winning Golden Boy who's writing these 12-issue maxi series, who's got a foot in the comics, now he's got a foot in the films, and he's working both angles, and he's able to kind of traverse those worlds and bring the movie side of things to the comics. But then they just didn't do anything about that. It's just like it's hard to get a read. Kind of like what you were saying. But to that end too, it also, like when we talk about the movies that they put out, we talk about movies like you said, the Joker and the Batman. it's not hard to see what has worked in the last couple of years for them. Like their Oscar bait movies work. Like, go with that. Let Marvel do their comic book. Like, and because you have at least 33% of the people who are making these movies at WB who are trying to figure out a way to mimic the Marvel train, right? But it's not that works for them. It's these Oscar bait movies that really do work. And I don't even like the Joker, but it worked. Just go with that. Make Oscar bait films. Make a connected universe. Do 1 or 2 a year maximum. Make them these high, capital A art, noir if you want to, just films that are something else, that have more pedigree or prestige to them than what these other films do. Because then you're opening up to a new market. And you're bringing, if you want to bring that high end look to it, then you've got something that they're not doing anywhere else. Go with that. I don't understand why. Like, it's not hard to see what works.
Yeah, and if you're trying to copy Marvel, it's not going to work because Marvel's
already Marvel.
Big head start.
Yeah, be yourself.
DC's been
find yourself and then be it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know that's very hard when you've had corporate upheaval. I mean, it's very hard to do that. But
plenty of multiple corporate upheavals, multiple leadership shakeups over the past decade and a half. We've got a couple of extra people who did join. So we've got Tony.
Hey, Tony.
Handsome Man. Hello, Tony. John Westoff throwing the devil horns. Hey, John.
There's more of that where you came from, huh?
Yeah. And then we've got a couple of comments here from David. He loved the Harley Quinn long title, which I thought was actually it was pretty fun. I've been saying this for years. They do need a Feige, and that's what they're looking for. They're looking for a Feige right now, which I don't know if there's another Feige out there that's going to act the same way. I mean, they tried to do that with Joss Whedon or Snyder, and that didn't
in
work.
some ways with Marvel though, I think I really like the idea of not connecting with it. Should just call them Elseworlds. I think that's a little too confusing, and I think people like the nature of connected universes. They've gotten used to it. It's also been interesting that most other attempts have been failures between Universal Monsters and Hasbro. I mean, Hasbro was, basically, killed out of the get-go. Micronauts canceled. But they also have the benefit now of having Power Rangers within the universe that they can create.
They can try to reboot that again.
And I think there's they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. But and something else I have to say with Marvel, I think that they did that because they didn't have access to Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, or X-Men. That was beneficial in a way.
The long run, in the long run,
because,
absolutely.
Because they had to, they had to create something where characters that were perceived as their heavy hitters weren't on the table. I'm not saying you should do this without Superman or Batman or Wonder Woman. I'm not saying that at all. But I do think that was very... It turned out to be beneficial for the development of the MCU.
They've been able to titrate out the suspense. Instead of just doing all in the first everything. So in the last when did Iron Man come out? 2008?
I'm not good with the years.
So
it's not the 80s. I'm not going to know it.
So you start with Iron Man, and you lay it all out, and now we're looking at another 8-year pattern where we're eventually going to unveil the X-Men, and you're gonna but you've now created a decades-long storyline, and you've been able to I love the word titrate. You've been able to titrate out how you deliver it to your audience and keep people connected and keep people coming. Because they know, they've got something to look forward to, and they know it leads into one another. So it's and that's what's comics. It's what comics always has been. It's long form storytelling with these characters.
It's soap operas.
They're doing the same thing with the cinematic universe that they did with the comics from the original basis. They're telling decades long stories with these characters, and they did it by accident, which is pretty cool. But I mean, if you look at the scope of things, it's how it works.
Yeah, and when you look at what failed with the other owners of the copyright or the properties, like what Fox was doing with X-Men, and they were trying to throw all the big stories out right away. Like, okay,
financially,
we're gonna
in no way
shoehorn in
would I
Dark
say
Phoenix.
Fox X-Men was a failure. I don't.
Well,
agree with that.
we're not a failure at all. But like,
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
Get better. It got worse. Whereas with Marvel,
culminating with Logan is getting worse.
Logan was great, but it was not a major hit, and also it kind of ignored a lot of the stuff that came before because you didn't have to deal with it because everybody was dead and everybody blah blah blah. Spoilers.
When I think of it, I think of
it was great. I loved it, but X3.
Yeah, so when I think of the X-Men, when I think of the Fox X-Men movie, I think of X1, X2, and X3. I don't even think about Logan or the
Days of Future Past. And
First all Class. Of those. I don't even by that time it's just like we're just talking about Halloween 7 by that point.
I like First Class. I like First Class.
I like First Class too, but like they fell into the trap of trying to follow their own canon. And their own canon didn't make any sense. It wasn't all that good. I mean, not unlike the real X-Men, but the X-Men in the comics, nothing really connects. But, you have... I think they did a poor job. And Sony, kept having to reboot their Spider-Man property because either they got a new director or a new creative vision, and so they're like, okay, we're going to start over again from the beginning. I mean, they've had 3 Spider-Men since they started making them in the early 2000s. And they've been able to tie it all together. No Way Home was great. But, interesting that I think Marvel kind of found the formula that worked.
Yeah.
And now Sony's benefiting a lot from that because they were able to take part.
All right.
But yeah, all
right. Bill's done with this.
I'm done. I'm still going with this. It's like all day it's this stuff, too. With people, all day.
All day.
And, that's another thing, and I'm sure you guys get this, and using the term civilians is kind of rude, but do people go to you for this stuff again and again and again? I get it so often. My God. I have one friend that thinks everything follows directly from the comics. What do I buy for Flashpoint? So, well, there's a series called Flashpoint, and you're probably going to get the big things, but I don't think you're going to have to worry about Project Superman or the freaking Canterbury Cricket. Being a subject matter expert isn't fun sometimes. It really isn't.
Especially when what they're asking about, technically, who knows what it's going to look like when they finish with it. Like, here's the Flashpoint. Oh, the Flashpoint that they're doing. Oh, they did something totally different. So you can read the original comics; it's not going to look the same.
Where's the Canterbury Cricket?
You know what did do a good job following the comics, or at least the spirit of the comics in many cases?
Son, there you go.
I don't know. I forgot my train of thought. What were we talking about again? Sandman! Yay!
All right, Steve, tell us about Sandman.
Sandman, the TV series. The long-awaited Netflix adaptation of the Sandman storyline. The Sandman comics started by Neil Gaiman, and lots of artistic contributions from so many different people. Sam Keith, Mike Dringenberg, Dave McKinnon on all of the covers and a lot of the other related tie-in art, and so many other people. So ridiculous numbers of people and artists who have been involved in this project since 1987. I think was the first.
A little later.
Was it?
I can't even tell you right now.
Because it was right before. It was sort of like the tail
1988 was the first published issue. It was approved in 87.
Yeah. So
after
coming off
he was originally scheduled to take over Swamp Thing, and then stuff happened. Yep.
Yeah. And Neil Gaiman, of course, this was a major, big project for him. He had done Miracle Man. He had done a couple other things, comics-wise, music journalism, all sorts of things. But this ended up being kind of
Horn.
the real kickoff. Yeah. this became the real big kickoff for his career, and he became Neil Gaiman off of the Sandman. Went on to do some amazing stuff, American Gods and Nancy Boys and Neverwhere and all these other things.
Coraline,
which I know a lot of kids in millennials grew up, and that is their childhood horror movie, or
Shit.
book. Yeah, but basically, they've been trying for 25 years to bring Sandman to a screen. Since Sandman finished in 1997, or at least the main series finished in 1997. And a lot of people were kind of like on edge about how this will turn out. We had some sort of tastes on some of the changes in storyline that were anticipated because Neil Gaiman and a wonderful cast had put out the audiobook or the audio play version a few years ago, and that reenacted all of Sandman through an audio play version where they did make some changes in story beats and things like that. But we've had the casting, the casting notes and the casting reveals come out, and a lot of controversy around who they cast for certain parts that were maybe a little bit different than what people perceived them to be from the comic books or in their headcanon, usually, which is fans. This is a fans thing. But I think everybody was really anticipating something big to come out of this and hoping that it would be good. Just so much hope that this would be a good series. And I have to say that I was brought to tears from how wonderful it was. It is. So, yeah. Should I do like a quick summary of what the first season's about?
Sure.
So the first season takes pretty much like the first two main storylines, first two main story arcs, which would be the Preludes and Nocturnes, where Dream gets his basically is captured and then works hard to regain the tools of his station. And then also the second major story arc, which is Doll's House, in which a vortex is born, a human vortex.
Hey, baby, you can flash that. Look at this. Fucking DC. Pre-Vertigo.
DC.
You can flash that. First printing,
Rose's
bitch.
sort of like development into the Dream Vortex, and how Dream and other people kind of deal with this. Also, it brings in a couple extra stories. There was the story about Hob Gadling that was incorporated into one of the episodes, and seamlessly, I might add, did an amazing job doing that. And also kind of referenced a few potential future stories. And yeah, there were some changes, some character changes. All of the, spoiler alert, all of the DC superhero stuff, especially for the main characters, was mostly removed, with one big exception, that I thought was very cleverly done. And some of the main characters were changed completely. A few gender swaps, so Lucian became Lucienne, the librarian. And also John Constantine became Johanna Constantine. And I know Constantine, that's been a thing for the past 35 years.
Well,
anyway.
It's also important to think there's two different female Constantines. One is in Sandman.
Yes.
Yeah, it's important.
There's an original Lady Johanna Constantine, which is from Sandman, and that's in the original comic series. And then there's the new Jenna Coleman version of John Constantine, who is modern Johanna Constantine, the traveling wizard, furiously bisexual and mostly drunk and kind of asshole-ish, but
So Constantine,
redeemable.
Yeah,
redeemable, but still kind of asshole. And I think Jenna's interpretation changed Constantine just enough to make the character more redeemable and more sympathetic in a way that I wasn't expecting. So there's some really interesting changes there, but the soul of the show, what sometimes happens when you adapt something from one medium to another, especially comics or prose novels into TV or film, something gets lost in that translation. And I don't think that anything was really lost here, and that in itself is a huge achievement. But also, I think that it reminded me how much I loved the story and the characters, that seeing them in this way just enhanced my appreciation of how wonderful, powerful, and genius this entire Sandman universe, this Sandman story is. And I have been gushing about it nonstop since Friday the 5th, and I'm biding my time so I can see it again with my husband and just binge watch it again. And this is going to be one of those few series that I will just be watching over and over and over again. Just as much as I read Sandman, every year or so I go through and I start rereading it and and get to experience it again.
I don't have the time
in a different way. So, but yeah,
okay.
Yeah, it was good. I liked it.
I put it on and mainlined 8 of the 10 episodes the first day. Not even the first day, the first night.
Yeah.
I think I started at 5 and I just kept going. And some of the shorter episodes are at the beginning too. There's 2 episodes that are under 40 minutes that are at the very beginning. I was stunned. And a comment I said to you guys, I'm watching Sandman and it's fucking Sandman.
Right.
And like you said, I mean, there are differences. There are gender swaps. There are racial swaps. None of it was disruptive as far as I'm concerned. If you're looking for disruption, then for you, Watchmen was the tail of the fucking squid. You're looking for stuff on that granular, level, and you never got it in the first place. The casting, I thought, was just spot on, from major characters like Death to, Cain and Abel. My God, these are characters I've
right off the page
that have been part of my life since I was 6 years old with the DC horror books, and I can't think of a better execution than we got with those characters. Before we started talking, we were just so impressed with the casting of Lyta.
Yeah.
And there's something very meta about having an actress that kind of looks like Gal Gadot and kind of has an almost Greek by way of Israel accent. And if you don't understand what I'm talking about, go to Wikipedia and look up Lyta Trevor. You'll understand. And, for me, one of my favorite things about Sandman was, and this is something I've never understood, people always like, I got into Vertigo because it wasn't DC Universe. Sandman is unabashedly DC Universe in the most subversive way. It's the only way it could work for them. But, with the original book, on the 14th page, you have Wesley Dodds. That was the first Sandman in DC Comics. Right from the get-go, Gaiman is saying, I'm in this sandbox. I'm in my own little corner of this sandbox, and I can do stuff that these other guys can't. But it's still the same sandbox. As you go on through the series, mostly with the obscure characters like Element Woman and Prez, just these amazing lyrical stories that, I don't think they're going to shy away from. Even in what we had, where there was, the analog for Dr. Dream, with no disruption there. You still got the basic story. He just never fought the fucking justice. That's all.
Yeah, you don't. And in that, I think with John D., they fleshed him out a lot more. So if you read comics for a long time, you're like, oh, that guy, he was that goofball.
He was he was a lot less bwahaha villain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where I still think within the Sandman book there were some traces of that.
Although he was twisted in a way that made him definitely much more of
Yeah.
a horror figure than a superhero villain.
but-
But here, David Thwaites made, like, I cared about him. I actually cared about, this murderous psycho, sociopath.
Yeah.
I cared about what happened to him.
But the thing was, when I'm watching this, like, what other path did this guy have?
Yeah.
It was like it just didn't exist for him. The normal options that would have been available to most of us weren't there.
And Ethel, the fact that they expanded the character of his mother, of Ethel D.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I cared about her, this relatively, obscure character from even Sandman obscurity, having such a stronger role, and then understanding, like you said, the path that John D went on, inescapable based on his history and what his mother went through and did that affected him in his future and the path that he was on. But
what I thought was great is the way that they did that, like you said, in such a short time frame. So one of the things, I've read the source material, so I'm familiar with it. My husband hasn't, and so when we were watching these first couple episodes, one of the things I kind of was like, I pre-warned him and said, don't get super attached to the people in the first few episodes because the timeline is going to move, and I wanted him to know that so he wasn't confused, right? Because I was worried about that, but they did such a seamless, marvelous job of walking you through the entirety of that history. The reference to Aleister Crowley, I thought was great. That made me laugh, but all the way up through John D. The way that they just moved you through that timeline was wonderful. It was seamless in a way that I didn't know that they'd be able to do, because it would almost feel like a misdirection, right? Like, so if you're watching this from week in to week out, and you're not binge watching it, all of a sudden these people that were key and manifest to your understanding of the show in the first episode are now unimportant. I mean, except for the history of it, but they don't play a role anymore. But they did they did the really critical storytelling elements, which that's what you would expect with Neil Gaiman being involved. Is he knows those points, and for Neil Gaiman too. I mean, if you've read his work, not only just Sandman, but the thing that makes Sandman work, and the thing that makes a lot of his stories work, is he's dealing not with his characters or concepts. He's dealing with these living, walking, talking metaphors. And I think that's, when we talk about, I think that kind of wraps everything and sums everything up with the things that we're talking about. Like you said, there was no disruption with the gender, quote unquote, the gender swaps and the racial swaps and everything, because these are concepts, right? Like
right.
For characters, even for Dream, it doesn't matter. Like the Vizia, if you understand these stories and you understand the work that Neil Gaiman was doing, the Visage was a shell, and it was the least important part. And you saw that a great example, and something that I didn't think that they were going to put in, was when he goes to hell and he sees, I forget her name,
Nulla.
Nulla. He sees her, and then you see him as he looked to her. And you see that this entire being, not only Dream, but all of the other Endless as well, they're kind of transmorphic. Because they're based on these. I don't even like the phrase high concept, because I really don't think it's high concept. I mean, this is primitive primal storytelling.
Right. I mean, just think of Greek mythologies. Just think of how many instances where the gods appear as the gods want to appear. To humans, and that's certainly carried over into this.
But one of the things that we were talking about for this and how it works for the book, and something that we haven't seen a whole lot of in the show, was this the comics connection to the broader DC universe and the way it worked in there. And obviously we credit Neil Gaiman for that. I think we should. But there's one name that we haven't mentioned here that I think is quintessential to making that work, and to actually bringing the conceptual level down a little bit and lacing it in, and that's Karen Berger. I mean, her editorial prowess on all of this, and the way that she worked things at Vertigo and lined everything up and made it work as kind of this DC but not DC, this veil between it, but that's pierced constantly. I think that's Karen Berger, and I think that's what made the comic work so well. And
well,
I think
I think it is and it isn't, because I think why Karen Berger was an excellent editor was she knew when to, and again, I'm just going on comments that I've heard from writers that she worked with, was that she knew when to interject and knew when to let people fly with ideas. So it's weird in that you can credit her with inaction, in a sense, of knowing when to let people run with things. But there certainly must have been times where she had at least with friggin' Grant Morrison, had to rein him in a bit, other than have a 72-page story in an issue. So I do think you can credit her with something, but I do think you can credit her more with good taste, I think, than anything else. Yeah. Because I do think there are other editors that would take a more active role in the storytelling element, where I thought I always had the perception that she was more the nurturer than the micromanager. And so I'm not saying that she doesn't get credit, because more than anyone else she is Vertigo,
right.
But I think I think she gets that accolade because she was very keen on when to let people run with ideas.
Yeah, but I mean, to that point now, and I completely agree with that. But I think you're right. I don't think she's the micromanager, but I do think that she saw the big picture in all of these things and how to keep the web tight, if that makes sense. So she wasn't telling you exactly where to put everything and what to do with it, but there were pinpoints on there throughout the entire, the Hellblazer, throughout all of it, that you can just see where she is somewhere in the mix, and she is making sure that all of these things connect at the certain points that they need to. Like the infrastructure was there for her, and I mean, she's in many ways the connective glue for pulling in all of these artists that work there too. But I mean, she's just such a powerhouse that I think you have to mention her when you talk about the way that these things work and the way that original story worked, and they just made it so special. We didn't talk about the Corinthians as far as people. I thought that is one of the most. I was wondering how they were going to pull off the horror elements that were in this, because there's the diner. It's very much. 24/7 is one of the 3 most terrifying episodes of television I think I've ever seen. It's right up there with Buffy's Hush, and with I forget what the episode's called, but it's the Weeping Angels episode of the Sandalwood or whatever the Doctor Who spin-off.
Torchwood.
Well,
yeah.
Was it Torchwood? Well, because
don't get into that. We can't go off there, Steve. No.
I was like to say the introduction of Weeping Angels was written. Don't Blink, which was the first Weeping Angels, was written by Neil Gaiman. So just kind of.
Oh, so that might be. I mean, that might be what I'm thinking of. But those are some of the most terrifying moments of television. But the guy who played the Corinthian just did such a phenomenal job. Genuinely terrifying.
I think across the board.
Yeah.
The casting was so good.
Rose, I loved Rose. When Rose was there, I was like, I believed in her character so much. And when there's that one moment where she walks into the throne room and she's like, "What are you talking about? You talking about my brother? You know where my brother is?" And they look like Lucienne and Dream will turn to look at her. It's like, what are you doing here? It's just,
first of all, how did you get here?
How did you get here? I love that because her from the comics was, again, very kind of like morose. Here, I think she's a little bit more, has a little bit more of a bubbly personality that she didn't really have at first in Doll's
She's more
House.
of an action
but that was because
hero,
those are the character one. Like the
sense.
character was like, ugh, my life sucks kind of thing. But this, I think there was this personification for gave her more to shine, more to work with,
and just there was a lot more that was organic. I thought her interactions with Unity felt much more organic than the comic. Yeah. I thought her relationship with Lyta was that was extremely believable. I absolutely believe these two were best friends. Absolutely. Where in the comic, it's like they kind of look like each other, and there's a couple of things that, and I don't want to reference a comic as much as I for people who might be watching this, because Gaiman said it today. There is no specific entry point. You're all welcome.
Right.
And they did that so well. If you went to the comic series after watching this, you can be like, oh, that's where that was. Oh, this is where that's different. But it's the same story. I mean, it is Sandman. That's the most amazing thing about it. And I'm so glad that this is coming in a post-Sopranos world, because if we had had a 2-hour Sandman movie and that was it, there's not enough bandwidth to tell the story properly. There just isn't. I mean, about the only Sandman element that I think would have worked cinematically prior to this type of long form television is Death: The High Cost of Living. I think that's the only one that could have worked prior to that.
I can see that,
and I hope we get that at some point. My God, I hope we get.
We need to find out what happened to Donna. Fox, like the story with Donna and Foxglove, which comes out of 24-Hour Diner.
Mm-hmm.
Which, again, one of the things that Sandman was so good at was planting seeds that he would then make good on later on, whether it was like a story arc later or years later in a different book. But I think that this series, if they are kind of doing what they have been talking about, like integrating other stories and maybe integrating some of the prequels and sequel series that have come up into the storylines, I think it's going to be extremely successful. So I'm so happy. And they've started writing season 2 scripts, so I think they're pretty optimistic at this point, even though Netflix hasn't announced it, and I'm really hoping they don't shoot themselves in the foot with this one. But it's top rated right now, extremely
80 countries.
Popular.
It's top stream.
It's a top talked to a buddy of mine in Germany today. Yeah, I talked to a buddy of mine in Germany today who was like, "Oh, I just started watching this. Have you? I thought of you but this is really great." And I'm like, "Yes, it is." So
it's not a complaint. It's more of just an observation. One thing I was hoping for, and just to preface this a little bit. So when we first see Dream's Castle, we first see the architecture of his world. It's just McKinnon everywhere, right? Like it is those covers brought to life in concrete, right? And so when I saw that, I got really excited, because one of my favorite arcs out of all of this is when he goes to hell, because Sam Keith's depiction of hell is one of my favorite in any version. I love the way that because it's just, the demons are crazy, everything is funky and ridiculous. I was really hoping they were going to put some more Sam Keith into just what hell looked like, and it really wasn't there. It was just kind of I don't want to use I don't know how to. It was kind of a stock version of, I think, what hell would look like. Lots of. So I was
the Suicide
hoping
Force, though. They didn't spend much time there, but that was kind of like a taste of Sam Keith's stuff.
Yeah, that was kind of it. I mean, I guess I don't know.
Apart from when they get to Lucifer's digs, for me, like the best depiction of hell ever in comics and almost anywhere is what was known as Swamp Thing Annual #2, where Swamp Thing goes to hell to rescue, and the things that I mean, that's just magical things in that book, and the when they see Arcane and he's all all the bugs are in him, and he asks Swamp Thing how many years he's been, and like, you died yesterday, and he like freaks out.
Yeah.
Until they got to the castle, I got that vibe a little bit, so I was happy. Then when you get to then when you get to Lucifer's digs, it is a bit stocky hell.
Yeah,
that I will admit, but
it's a bit legend.
Yes, yes,
yeah, yes. It's like, really, is this the comfortable kind of palace that you would expect somebody as regal as Gwendolyn Christie as Lucifer? Which, she was.
I thought she was okay. I thought she was okay.
I loved her.
I just wanted somebody to fix that wig. That's all I wanted.
The wig was kind of blah. But
I wasn't like super excited when she was on screen.
She had the image like because when she smiles, when she has that sort of like, she was supposed to look almost cherubic.
So and I think that was like there. This, I just don't think she's a very accomplished actress at this point, which she's not. So if there was anything I would replace, not the nature of a female actress playing that role, but I just didn't think she had it as good as other actresses I can think of off the top of my head.
Well, I know a lot of people.
That was the only thing where I thought,
Tilda.
It's okay. I mean, it wasn't bad by any estimation. I thought Tom Ellis showed so much class when they asked him about Lucifer in this, where he said, "I would have done the role for free," but by the same token, the name of the show is Sandman and not Lucifer.
Yeah.
I thought that was just a class statement.
But James actually.
Yeah.
James actually, hey James, he chimes in here and says, "Hey Handsomers, I wanted to like Gwendolyn more, but I couldn't help but think, man, Helen Mirren in this role. That's an interesting take of Helen Mirren, because I always picture Lucifer very much like a, like a David Bowie type. But again, that's how he's been mostly drawn. In the Sandman universe, is very David Bowie-ish. But having sort of like an older, more sort of like stately woman as Lucifer would have been a very interesting take on it. I don't know how I'd feel about it, but I mean that's an interesting choice. And I know a lot of people kind of wanted Tilda Swinton, mostly kind of reprising what she already did in Constantine, and I have a feeling that if she was asked, she probably would have said, "I've already done something like that." So
yeah,
you know who I think wanted Tilda Swinton the most? The people who were directing the episode, because that is what they tried to do with Gwendolyn. They tried to make they tried to make Gwen Tilda Swinton, and I don't think it worked overall. I think it fell short of what they wanted. I don't think it was bad by any means. Like this is a nit. Like we're picking nits at this point, but I just don't think it was. It wasn't compelling. It didn't do what I wanted to. Mazikeen, I think, stole the scene and didn't say a word. So
yeah.
I thought that was great.
Giving her that full half face. Oof.
Yeah.
Okay, I got to ask you guys, did you cry at any point? I cried at 2 points.
Yes! Gregory, episode 2, right away. Gregory, I bawled like a fucking baby. All of episode 6. Which was The Sound of Her Wings and the Hobgadling story.
One moment in The Sound of Her Wings, when she goes to the baby.
Yeah,
says, "I'm sorry, little one. This is all you get." I'm like tearing up.
I was already.
Oh my god!
With the first,
also with The Sound of Her Wings, I could not believe what I was seeing. This is how I pictured a lot of it. Not so much the visuals, because there are some differences. It's a lot more muted in the comic version, but the tone and oh my god, it's so good. It was so
Kirby
good.
Howell,
I so hope she gets to do the high cost of living. I hope.
Oh my god!
I mean, I know we got more from her later on in Sandman proper.
Yeah.
But my god, if we get her doing the high cost of living, oh my god!
She's glorious.
So
glorious. Good. And then Hob was great too. Hob was so much fun. I cried at that one, especially the part where he was down on his luck. He had basically squandered his fortune. His family was dead. He was living off of nothing and had starved for years without dying, and describing how awful his life was. And he says, well, I guess then you're done with things. And Hop's like, are you joking? I still have so much left to live.
Yep.
I will never give this up for a million, for anything.
Yeah.
And I'm just sort of like, that because that's how I felt when I was reading the Sandman issue. Just sort of like, so, like, this is a person who wants to live and continue living no matter how bad things get. He's been super high, he's been super low, but he still sees there's more. There's so much more. So, yeah, it was that whole episode I was just, waterworks were on, happy and sad tears. It was like one big long Hallmark commercial in my head, because like every time I see that stupid little girl who gives her teacher a card at Christmas, I a ball. But this was pure joy, and it was wonderful.
Yeah, I did nothing.
And then happy tears with Goldie.
Yeah,
happy tears.
Yeah,
happy tears with Goldie.
Goldie.
Nothing in the show has kicked in the waterworks yet, but I've smiled a whole lot. Whole lot, even in the sad moments. But yeah,
and it's very
any better than what it is.
Yeah, and I get the impression it's going to be very rewatchable.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm certain there are nuances I did not cry. Yes, yeah, and oh my, Stephen Fry strikes me as an actor that it's very hard to use him properly.
Mm-hmm.
And my God, he was so good.
Yeah, James kind of kicked that off with "I cried at Big Little Screen," turning back to his original form.
All of the denizens of the bed and breakfast. Oh my God, it was just so
Zelda
so good.
And
I did almost cry at the Galt scene where Galt is being basically damned, and she just says we all have the capacity for change. Some nightmares just want to be dreamed. Like that almost got me. That almost like that's just that was such a power. And I was so confused, and I think Roger was confused as well when we were watching that part, because he's like, she's just protecting this kid. Like this is a nightmare. Like why is this supposed to be a nightmare? What's going on? And then you realize like she is bucking the system, and which is going to play an important role for who these characters are. But it just like that moment right there where she's just getting sent into the Shadowland, and she's just like we all have the capacity to change. I just want to be drink.
As James just said here, like letter perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, I think casting overall, and I know you kind of disagree a little bit about Gwendolyn Christie, but I think the casting overall has been amazing. John Cameron Mitchell as Hal, absolutely great. But yeah, I think they worked hard to get this right, and ignored so much of the fan criticism or helpful or
anybody who criticized this was not a fan.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Anyone who criticized this was not a fan.
No, before they saw it,
they just weren't. And I'm certain they never read a Sandman comic in their life.
Yeah,
a lot of these people that complained about casting.
And who played Desire? That was
Tyler.
Oh goodness, what was their name? Mason Alexander Park.
Yeah.
And
also, I have to say, I was today years old when I learned that Ezra Miller goes by they them.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I was today years old. I didn't know that.
They have been going by that for a few years. But Mason Alexander Park did an amazing job because, and that would have been like the hardest role to do. There were very few people that get that pure androgyny or non-binary kind of appearance and exude that kind of sexuality in a way on screen that's also as sinister as Desire has always been. And oh my gosh, they did. They were Desire. They were exactly how I pictured Desire to be.
All right, so this is a bit of previewing since it seems to be a very, very faithful adaptation. However you apply metrics to this. Steve brought up in discussion this week about what our favorite Sandman arcs in the graphic novel comic series are. So, Steve, since you brought it up, what's yours? If you are just becoming familiar with the world of Sandman, we're going to give you tiny little previews here, I guess.
So, and this is what's really interesting. When I came to Sandman, I came in on an arc that barely featured Dream at all, and that was the World's End arc, which was kind of a sort of a way station in between some very heavy, and very powerful and important story arcs. It came right between Brief Lives and The Kindly Ones. And in World's End, it's two co-workers who don't really like each other very much, get lost in a snowstorm and end up in this inn. And the inn is just filled with all sorts of people from all different time periods, fantastic creatures, etc. And they're all there telling stories. And each issue, each chapter is a different story told by one of the guests. And I love the story arc because not only does it encapsulate what I love so much about Gaiman's writing, in that he can take any subject and just make it magical, and just just hold your attention even for just a single 22-page, this isn't going to go anywhere else kind of story. But at the same time, if you have read the rest of Sandman or go on to read the rest of Sandman after reading these, you find the connective tissues, you find the references that are made in these stories, whether it's a certain character that makes another appearance or whether it's a theme that shows up even briefly. And in this one too, he even hints at the end of the Sandman series altogether, which doesn't happen for another, I think, 20 some odd issues. But in one chapter, in one of the final chapters of World's End, you see the end. He shows you how it ends, or at least how this series ends. And I think that World's End, especially after having read that and then gone back and read it after reading everything else, it's one of those story arcs that to me is always fascinating, a fun read, and just always has something new to show. So, World's End is my favorite story arc.
Okay. How about you, Caleb?
So mine actually takes place right around the same time that Steve's does. I think it happened just before or just after.
Before.
Just before, yeah. And it's the Brief Lives storyline. To me, this is one of Morpheus's most human stories because it's all about family and it's all about doing something for other people despite what you want to do. So in the story, it was also Jill Thompson. I mean, it's just gorgeous. So one of the other endless, his sister Pandemonium,
Delirium.
Delirium. Sorry, brain.
Yeah.
They're all D's.
Yeah,
all D's.
And I'm damn near dead. So Delirium comes to him and is just like, hey, we need to go find our brother Destruction, who's also called the Prodigal, who also you get referenced in the show. I noticed that and I'm like, ooh, here we go. But
the empty
he's
picture
missing.
in the gallery.
Yep, and it's empty. Yeah, he's missing, and she wants to find him. She misses her brother, and so she goes to the twins and just doesn't get any help from them, right? And so then now that Dream's back, now that Morpheus is back in action, she goes to him and it's like, hey, let's do this. And he's got like his own motives for kind of going on this path with her for a little bit. Like there's something he, like, without ruining it, I mean, for those of you who haven't read it, I guess I could spoil something that's 10 years old, 15 years old, but he has his own motivations for doing it, and they get halfway through it and then he doesn't get what he wants out of it, so he's just like, nah, I'm done, I'm not doing this anymore, and just breaks her little heart, like breaks her little crazy person heart. And she just goes off into her own realm and like shuts down her aspects so nobody can see it, and which pisses off Death and some of the other siblings, and they're like, hey, you did this, go say you're sorry. And he's like, why? Like, she'll get over it in a millennium, like, we're the Endless, why don't you do that? And they're like, no, it doesn't work that way, not especially not with her, of all people, or of all of the beings, so you got to go fix this. And so he does, and they end up getting back on the path, and spoiler, they end up finding Destruction for what it's worth. But it's that journey that he takes with her. I mean, like, and the whole thing is him. I shouldn't say the whole thing. I mean, there's a large theme of this is him connecting with this human spirit that's inside of him that he thinks he is untethered from, because he is, likened to a god. but he's really like the whole thing is just him dealing with these really human emotions and this love and this connection with his sibling and this aspect of delirium, despite her flaws, despite her faults. I shouldn't even say faults. Her flaws are like she can't help it, and those are actually what make her endearing to him at the end of it. Especially when after they found destruction and he's just like laid it all out, right? Like he just breaks it down for Dream. It's like, here's how you're not living right, son. I love that. And again, Jill Thompson just delivered a beautiful visual representation of all of these. I really wanted Delirium to start singing "Girls Just Want to Have Fun" at some point, because it just evokes that look so much. But that is one of the stories in this tome of stories that actually did make me cry as I'm reading it. I'm just sitting there like there's such a powerful moment in there where it's just him getting over himself a little bit. That just hits you in the chest. I love these stories.
Okay. I have a difference between what I think is the best Sandman story and what's my favorite arc. So my favorite overall arc, it's actually one of the shorter arcs, and that's Dream Country. And they're very disjointed stories, but there is an overall sense of, because I think at that point the series was kind of it kind of was a self-driving car at that point, and the stories that are in there, the cats, and the heartbreaking Element Girl story at the end of it. It just seemed that was in some ways the series peak, because it was just at that point anything went in the series. There was anything. There wasn't any ingredient he couldn't throw in the soup and somehow make it tasty. But what I think is the single best story within Sandman is actually issue 50, which is, I guess like we're 3/4, we're 2/4 of the way toward the end. And that's Ramadan, which is drawn by P. Craig Russell. And it's some absolutely exquisite art. It concerns the first caliph of Baghdad, who is the same caliph in the Arabian Nights stories. Though he is actually a historical figure, there is coinage that proves this he existed. And he loves his city so much that he offers it to Dream to keep it intact. And even though he knows that means the downfall of what will happen to Baghdad in the future.
Yeah.
It touches on a basic element of be careful what you wish for. That's a story, told time and again. But the notion of, you can't really call it patriotism, but love of your home is in the mix there. Ego is in there. All these disparate elements of very human emotions that somehow coagulate into what makes a human tick. And the worst part of that in the end is war. And there is a stunning last page that brings us up to what was then the present day in Baghdad. And a conversation between a boy and an old man. And it is so... I don't want to say it's gut-wrenching, because you don't have a familiarity with these characters enough to really gauge an opinion on them, but just that that there is this perseverance of time, and it's a very striking story to me. It's the most human story within the entire arc, as far as I'm concerned, and it comes at the perfect point too in the overall Sandman arc. It's for our parlance, done in one. And I just think that's it's like, for me, it's up there with Watchmen 4, the Timekeeper issue. of just something that is just so so of its own it's failing me. I'm sorry, I don't have the words.
It's of a class.
Yeah.
It's of a class.
Sorry about that.
And I think unfortunately reality makes the weight of that story even more pressing, because when you consider that story is when it's being written, when it's being laid out, it's meant to evoke the connection of particularly Western readers to the Gulf War and the aftermath of the Gulf War. And then you have me, who I didn't read this, like I didn't read these. I did not read Sandman until probably the first issue. I think I read 3 years ago. This is very new to me. I had not read it. Of all of these grails of comics that we talk about, I just hadn't. I still haven't read the entirety of the thing. I'm halfway through the entire series. But for me, and people, millennials and Gen Z, whatever you want to call them, for us to go back and read this now and realize that, hey, this is not being written about the Iraq War that we knew, that we grew up with. This predates that. This is a precedent for that, and nothing changed. And it just kind of, like, history repeated itself in such a quick cycle that weight, even for us, is still there. That's powerful. Like that is some, and the verisimilitude that's just laced into that is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, the loss of magic is very striking.
Yeah,
it's a very striking feel, and it just evokes that where you have you don't have the absence of hope, but you have the absence of what's behind hope. Yeah. Faith. Yeah. Good way of putting it. Absolutely.
Well, and Sandman lays that out from the get-go, and what I think is some of the most clever writing of the entire series, which happens in the first part of that, which happens in Hell, which is the duel, where at the end of it, of all of these things, of the duel with the demon to get his mask back, he wins it against all odds by reminding you that hope never dies. There's nothing that can kill hope, but it can kill faith. And like that is one of the most powerful pieces of really clever writing that's ever that Neil Gaiman's ever done, and he's done a lot of clever writing. But that just sets the thematic tone, and I think like that he just runs with it. It's just once he lays it out, the horse is out of the barn, and you can't corral it. He just goes for it, and it's just he finds new ways to remind you of that.
Yeah.
Okay, it's late already, but this one's just going to be a long one, boys. It's just the way it is. So let's talk about another kind of magic, which was DC's League of Super Pets. Steve, you're our synopsis guy, so you take it from there.
So I wrote a quick one, so we'll see how this pans out. Krypto and Superman are best buds, with really their only conflict is being where he and Soup stand on Lois Lane. And unfortunately, something else happens that creates a situation where Krypto is forced to try and save Superman. And that's when a piece of orange kryptonite, originally pulled down to Earth by Lex Luthor, is intercepted by an evil little hairless guinea pig named Lulu, who uses it to give herself superpowers and make do on her scheme to trap the Justice League in order to impress her big crush, I guess, Lex Luthor. In that same breath of her getting powers, other animals at that same shelter also develop superpowers, and Krypto is forced to rely on them to help him save not just Superman but the entire Justice League. So he learns about himself and how to be a better friend, and at the same time the animals learn that there's more to them than just being shelter pets or shelter animals, that there's a world out there where they can belong as well. Really great, the characters. Real quick, you've got Ace, Mert, one of my favorites, Chip, PB, the pig, and there's Lulu the evil guinea pig also creates a whole army of other guinea pigs, and there's 2 additional ones. I think it's what are they?
It's Mark and Keith. They're named after Keith
Mark
Giffen
and Keith.
And
That's right.
J. Mark DeMatteis. Yeah.
Exactly. So Mark and Keith,
and they coincidentally have fire and ice powers. So a wonderful little meta tribute there too.
But the cast in this, of course, is also pretty fantastic. You've got everybody who is involved in DC, but also everybody else that they could grab on this. You've got Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as Krypto, Kevin Hart as Ace, Keanu Reeves is Bruce Wayne Batman. I didn't realize that until after the credits started rolling.
He has the
John
best line
Krasinski.
in the movie. He is the best line in the movie.
John Krasinski is Superman. Kate McKinnon is fantastic as Lulu, the evil guinea pig. Diego Luna is Chip. Natasha Lyonne as Mert, the turtle. Vanessa Bayer as the super over excitable PB. And just
Mark Maron as Lex Luthor. I thought
Mark Maron as Lex Luthor. Yeah. I mean, you just basically have everybody here. It's just fun. It's just a super fun cast and a super fun movie. And the jokes are flying pretty fast. The lines are really great. It's for kids and adults, but not in the way where the adult humor is then crass. They actually do a really great job of making it funny without going. It's
not Shrek.
It's not Shrek. Yeah. And some of my favorite lines were, of course, uttered by both Mert and Lulu. And I mean, I had kids in the theater in the showing that I was at, kids that were guffawing as hard as some of the adults were at certain jokes, and then others that only the kids laughed at. Like one of my favorites was, what is this, Paw Patrol? And the 8-year-old girl who was sitting a couple seats away was like, was just like going wild. And I'm like, that joke was for you. But it was so much fun. Such a fun show. Did anybody else like it?
I had a very different experience seeing it. Let me tell you, I saw it at 9:30 p.m. on a Tuesday night because this boy wants to avoid people because of high-risk categories.
Yep.
And it was a private screening.
There you go.
And, I missed people to share the laughs with, but still, it was kind of cool, having a big theater to myself. Absolutely adored it. The line I'm going to mention with Keanu Reeves as Batman was, "I hope that's a licensed product."
Squishy Bruce.
Squishy Bruce, which is the only way to call Batman from now on. I hope someone
Bruce
somewhere does that. But it also amazed me that there was some elements of like, Ace's backstory was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And it was so well handled where it wasn't heavy-handed. It's a very simple reason why he's in the predicament that he's in, and his justification for it was just beautiful.
And it's Squeezy Bruce. Sorry, I misspoke. Squeezy Bruce and Squeezy Clark.
Yeah, and it was like it's just a very fun romp. It didn't try to be more than it was. It knew exactly what the film needed it to be. Wonderful post credit, which is kind of again another meta situation. So just please stay for the credits. I would absolutely love an art book for the end credits. Oh my God, those were just gorgeous drawings. I can't conceive of there not being, since this was the number one film at the box office that week. I can't conceive of there not being something beyond this, even despite HDO's issues. Warner Discovery, sorry. I just thought it was just a wonderful entertainment for both kids and adults. And like Shrek is a very good counterbalance where they worked so it worked too hard for adult references in there, where this was in some ways more organic.
Yeah.
Well, the references
pretentious.
No,
less
and
way funny. Yeah.
So we thought it was absolutely adorable. I actually went and watched it last night, just because we hadn't seen it yet. So I was like, I've got to watch it before we talk about this on the show. What makes it work is that this is for adults who grew up with Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman. Like the jokes are for adults who are nostalgic, who have grown up and they understand some funny things, but they're just nostalgic for the humor that these characters can provide. Like that's what makes them work, and the kids love it, and we all loved it, and we didn't have a lot of people in the theater either, just because we went afternoon on a Wednesday. But number one, Steve is Mert. Like I remember sitting there when we were watching it, and the jokes that Mert was making, and the unabashed and unstoppable flirtation. I was like, oh, this is Steve. Like I know this guy.
What was the? She's had so many great lines. One of my favorites were, "Where the fuck am I?" But bleeped. Just where the bleep am I?
Like, I love when Mert gets the glasses, type. And it's like, hey, you're not turtles at all. But
none of you are turtles. No.
Oh, that
evil
heroes.
Kitty cat. Nobody's mentioned the evil kitty cat, the evil kitten.
Yeah, with the murder tail.
The murder tail.
But they really did nail the Justice League. Like I was wondering, because look, the Justice League and Batman in cartoon form, like there's a lot of precedent for that. Like those are near and dear to I think a lot of us. And so anytime you give me a new version of like cartoon Justice League, I'm gonna be like, okay, how does this hold up to the other ones? To me, it does. It was a good representation of them, and we got to see Jessica. Like that was cool.
Jessica Cruz. I was like Spearhand Aquaman, which was like, that's a deep cut.
Got distracted like a fish.
Oh my god, can we please get more of this version of Mercy Graves? I died.
Mercy, I love Mercy.
Oh my god, I always knew how.
The fact that they had Mercy in this, that they treated her like an integral part of Lex Luthor's, mwahaha schemes. It's like, Mercy, he's got to have an assistant every time.
Yeah.
But,
no.
Oh man,
big thumbs up.
I can imagine the outtakes, the audio outtakes from this are gold.
Just animal testing's bad. That's the point of the movie. Just don't do it. Stay away from it.
But even that was just like, oh my god, it was so
we
good.
even get
so
Spanish on miércoles. Oh my god, just all these little things, the little lines are just.
We're pet
all
people,
the insults
so
about
like
hamsters.
Raj looked over at me about 4 different times in the movie. He's like, I need to go snuggle our puppies right now. Like, I need to go snuggle them right now. I was like, no, we're going to finish the movie. Go see it. It's super cute, super fun.
Well, we still got enough time to talk about a few comic books before we wrap up. So,
were we supposed to read those this week?
Yeah. It's the first two, and first 2 words in the show. So yeah.
Well,
We're not the comic book based bears.
Comic book based bears.
I thought we were going on the Comic-Con model now, where we just we call ourselves the comic thing, and then we just have all of these movie stuffs,
movies and TV shows. Next week we'll be talking about industry. Okay. I'm going to talk about this. I don't know if anybody else has read this.
No.
I've been actually shocked. I have never heard of Opus Comics before, Opus Comics group, until Frank Frazetta's Death Dealer came out a few months ago, and I've been absolutely loving Death Dealer. But this was what Opus tends to do is they take music groups or concepts, usually outside of Frank Frazetta's Death Dealer, and they turn either their album concepts or music and song concepts into comics. And this is the latest one, based on Cradle of Filth. This is the Cradle of Filth number 1, which costs $6.66. Anyway, But it takes two. One, I think there's two stories in this. One that is based on, I think it's Enter the Succubi, which is one of their albums, and then the second one is based directly on the song Nemesis, and the artwork is absolutely gorgeous. In some, like, for the first arc, the first story that's told in this, which is the perspective of a child of hell, describing their job of gathering souls to keep Lucifer beautiful.
Yeah, Steve, who is the artist there?
Oh yeah, okay, so yeah, I've got to give. There's a couple different artists, obviously, because there are two different books and two different writers, actually. So the first story about the succubus was written by Holly Interlandi, and the art there is by Menton 3, who I'm not familiar with, but just some like gorgeous, painterly colors and very interesting interpretive kind of style there. And then the second story is written by Kenny Porter with art by Piotr Kowalski, called Nemesis, and again, it's based on the song Nemesis. In fact, several of the lines straight from this from the story are taken directly from the lyrics. And in that story, it's a knight, a very dark and scary knight, comes to exact his revenge upon this king who's destroyed an entire city's worth, an entire city's population, and built his kingdom and built his castle on top of their bones. And he's there for revenge. Revenge mostly for his daughter, but also just revenge on his people, to wipe out this king and his legacy. And it's very, constantly repeating, I am Nemesis. May their blood, I dedicate this battle to you, my dearest Eliza. May their blood nurture roses in your name. So many wonderful lines, some of them stolen straight from the lyrics. Great first issue. I'm sure the next issue is going to be just as wild and crazy. But I do not listen to Cradle of Filth. But I did have to go back and actually listen to. I know I had to go back and listen to some of their songs, and there's some really great lyrical stuff, because it's it's British, it's very dark, heavy metal, but there's a lot of fantasy and horror elements that are in there that really translate well to fantasy or horror comics. So I recommend it if you're into that kind of thing. But Opus, if this doesn't sound familiar, it doesn't sound interesting, but Opus's concepts do, I do recommend picking up some Opus Comics books and giving them a shot if you find something that's based on a band you like Evanescence or Crystal Method, or one of the other ones that's been.
Okay, I know what that is now. I'm okay. Yeah, I read one of the other comics that they put out. I'm trying to remember what it was.
Yeah. They've got a couple in here. Let's see. There's the Black Veil Brides, Eminence's Exodus, Crystal Planet is one of the ones, and of course Frank Frazetta, which is not based on music, but his art.
There's a lot of alignment with Frank Frazetta,
right? And metal. It's weird that Evanescence is in there. That they did an Evanescence comic. Okay, but okay. I'm glad the artwork's good in that, because so many music-made comics do not get the good artist treatment. So that makes me happy.
Very true. This is not a Kiss Meets Archie, although there is a camp factor in Kiss Meets Archie, or Archie Meets Kiss. So there's
Kiss Meets Archie is what it needs, but there's particularly the Kiss Image series has some spectacular art and some god awful art. A lot almost like Dark Horse Star Wars, where
there's
or
Doctor Who comics.
They're clearly giving people their first big job, and some of them just don't come through.
Or still show that they're learning.
So. Yeah, there is something Opus. I have to look here, because there was something I almost picked up. It wasn't Disturbed, God knows.
There's a Disturbed series.
There was something I almost picked up.
Was it Exodus?
No. It wasn't Bill and Ted.
There's a Bill and Ted comic.
Maybe it's something that just isn't on the website at this point. but there was maybe it was something, because I know they're a subsidiary of Black Cape, and maybe there was something Black Cape. Maybe that's I'm not confusing it, where it wasn't necessarily a rock based comic, but there was enough connective tissue with it that's why it's sticking out for me. So I'll figure it out later. It's not important.
Yeah. Yep. Interesting. There's some interesting stuff. So again, you'll find something, or I recommend giving them a shot to see if there's something that kind of fits your
vibe. All right, Caleb, what about you? What are you reading that you're enjoying?
Well, you segued us into it. You said Dark Horse, and there is a new series from Dark Horse which I am, I guess, coded to love. Like, I knew I was going to like it, but I really like it more than I thought I was. And that is this new series from Tyler Crook. It's called The Lonesome Hunters. I think you can see from the album art, who it is. If you know me, you listened to me speak before, you know that I am a self-professed mega fan of Tyler Crook. I love everything he's ever done. I discovered him in Harrow County, and then just went down the rabbit hole. And basically, if his name's on it, I'm gonna pick it up. I think he's the best, watercolorist. One of the best watercolorists, if not the best, working in comics today. I just adore him. So this story is actually about a little old man, and his name is Howard Abraham. But Howard Abraham is more than meets the eye. Like, when you see him, you just think he's just kind of this neighborhood curmudgeon who just keeps to himself and kind of does his own thing. He's very solitary, but he's got a story. And it's linked into a world of magic. See, back when Abraham was a boy, his father and kind of his whole family were monster hunters. And that was they use these magic artifacts to hunt down these creatures. And if you've read Harrow County, then you know what kind of visuals Tyler Crook is going to deliver when it's these weird and nasty and magical things. And so he wants to prove himself to his family, to his dad, right? So he uses this giant ebony sword, this ebony blade, but it backfires on him. He ends up costing more than it was worth without ruining anything. So he never uses it again. He puts it in a box, literally, and hides it away until time marches on as it wants to do. And he wakes up one day and his life has passed him. He's in his twilight years. And he's never hunted monsters or used magic since. He's cut it off. But on this particular day, as he's walking home, these weird kind of strange things are happening. These birds are starting to gather around, and there are these magpies. And so he's trying to avoid it because he senses that something's happening. Goes up into his apartment. Well, the neighbor's apartment is this young girl and her brother who are living together. And without ruining anything, they're after this girl to a point. If that it gets to a space where these creatures, these magpies, these spirits want something that they sense in this girl, and it just so happens that the universe has brought him in close proximity with her. So in order to save her, he goes to the box, pulls out the sword, and goes to work and blows his cover. And so this is going to be a 4-issue series that connects this older gentleman with this young girl that he's trying to protect, the magic that they are fighting to use and fighting against, and something dark and sinister that's lurking. I don't know what this was. This little jazz hand thing I did off screen. Something dark and sinister that is working against them off screen. This mother of crows, so to speak. So I'm in it. This could just not have words if it didn't want to. I'd look at it. It's beautiful. But Tyler Crook is both writing, painting, drawing, and lettering this. He's doing all the work. So check it out. It's exactly what you want from Tyler Crook from that story. So highly recommend it.
Okay, cool. The comic I want to talk about was not what I was expecting to put at the top of the stack when I started going through this ridiculous pile of DC comics that I've received in the last box. But Deathstroke Incorporated was basically a precursor series to Shadow War and elements of Dark Crisis. The series is departing from its Deathstroke Incorporated narrative, at least for the time being. And so what we have in the book right now with the new creative team is Deathstroke Year One. Now, DC's done pretty good with some Year One stories in the past. A frustration I have with Deathstroke, and also I got the Mego Deathstroke came in finally from a pre-order. So this was kind of like unexpected Deathstroke week. It's a character I really am fascinated by. You can't call him a favorite because there's a lot of shitty traits in the character. You know, whatever metric you use to analyze him, he is a statutory rapist. He has very questionable parenting skills. And you know, generally, you know, and generally assassins are, you know, not are characters that you know you should look as ones to view as you know, paragons of virtue. But at the same token, he is a character that lives by a code. The biggest frustration I've had for a long time with Deathstroke is the inconsistency in tone for the character. There certainly are elements of how Jeff Johns wrote the character that I enjoyed. Certainly elements from what Christopher Priest, you know, a little more recently did with the character. But even with interesting interpretations of the character like that, it feels like the alignment with the character as created by Marv Wolfman, there's not necessarily an inconsistency in tone or history, but there's definitely an inconsistency in motivations of the character. I think some of the writers bring their preconceived notions about the badass character to the book, which I don't think it really should apply. This is a good start of kind of laying a groundwork for a new terrain for the character, and this does feel like the Deathstroke we met in New Teen Titans #2. Again, it's a year one. It's an origin story where Slade Wilson is at the beginning, as he's basically ended his military career. He volunteers for a program to enhance his abilities to be of some use to his government going forward. He discovers that of 49 applicants to this process, he's the only one that survived. And the situation he's in at home right now is he has a new son, Grant, who was the first Ravager. And he's really fucking up as a father to Grant. His marriage to Addie is failing. So he decides that he's going to do what he does best, and what he does best is killing. And there's a wonderful line in here in issue #2, and this explains Slade Wilson in a way that I think no one has explained better. I was hoping to get the exact line in here, but I didn't want to, ruin the book with paper, with marks there. But I'll just paraphrase it. I'll eventually find it, where he's self-analyzing himself and his. It's here. I've only ever been good at one thing: killing. I know that makes me a monster, but the world needs monsters like me. Best definition of Deathstroke ever. The art is by Dexter Soy. It's written by Ed Brisson. Beautiful covers, and I believe his name is pronounced Michael Janin. I believe that's the way it's pronounced. It looks like Michael Janin. As a new template for the character, I think this is a very promising start. You have other elements. You have a super queer version of Wintergreen, at least the way that I'm reading it. That may be, ascribing factors, but I've always wondered with Wintergreen, who's basically like his Alfred, why this guy would be around, and you do kind of get a sense that there's a bit of a crush. And at the end of the second issue, we see another very familiar DC character, one that does have a subsequent relationship, for lack of a better term, with Deathstroke. Again, I was not expecting for this to be the series that I would pull, but I really enjoyed the first two issues of this. And again, it's been a frustration for me because I do think it's a very interesting character that hasn't necessarily been handled very well in certain hands. And I hope that starts. And he has a big role right now in Dark Crisis as the leader of the secret society. It's a little confusing, but I am getting this feeling from Dark Crisis that Williamson knows that none of this shit's going to matter in a few months. At least that's the feeling that I get. So why not have fun? But I think it's a very promising reboot for the character. And we've had his origin story before, but mostly in flashback. I don't think it's ever been provided in a narrative as the action is happening. I'm almost certain every time that his origin's been dealt with, it's been in flashback, and it's nice to see this mechanism in place where it's not clouded by that. So really interested. First two issues.
Cool. Yeah. He's still one of my least favorite characters.
Really? And why? I just want to know why.
I think you really touched on it, the inconsistency with how he's being presented, because sometimes he's nothing more than like a kind of a scamp kind of mentor where he's like, I'm tough, but it's because I care. But other times he's just an absolute vile monster, or he's just an indifferent mercenary who really doesn't really have any real stake in what he's doing. So it's just sort of like, well, it's just a job. I'm going to do the job.
Yeah.
It's almost like, and I think a lot of people kind of have the same criticism with like the Punisher. It all depends on who's writing him and what purpose they're using him for. Like, is he pulling all the strings and he's just going to destroy the Teen Titans or whatever group that he's working with? Is he, trying to reform himself by, getting a band of misfits and anti-heroes together to,
which he's done like 3 times. Yeah.
Which he's done like 3 times. Yeah. Or, or is he just, villain, evil to be evil, almost unbeatable and invincible up until the very end when they find some kind of linchpin to defeat him, and then he's like, well, I'll get away, I'll be back, blah blah blah. Like, it's so dependent on what they're using it for and who's writing it, and
it just frustrates me because there was so much. They were very judicious in using him in New Teen Titans. They were, where I do think something like Brother Blood was used like maybe one too many times. I'm talking about the original run, but with his use in New Teen Titans, it's an amazing character arc between his introduction and then into Judah's contract. It shows there's a lot more to this character than you initially thought. But I think you pinpointed like what some of the problems have been. They don't kind of stick to the landing very often with him. I think Titans, when he had his version of Titans, was perfect example of that. So much promise with this group of no way you can call them heroes, but are they exactly villains at this point in their life? As a mercenary team for hire, and then it just went into just the goofiest comic booky tropes toward the end, and the character deserves better. It does, because there is a lot of nuance there that I think has been improperly mined. Let me put it that way. I'm never going to root for a statutory rapist, but where does that come from? I'd like to know, because because the actions with him and Tara, no matter how you feel about them, it was believable, and let's explore some of that a bit more. So there you go. Never be redeemed, but at least give us good stories. All right, we're going to wrap this episode of the Comic Book Bears up, and when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears podcast up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week segment. And the bear community, if you find a fella attractive, you woof at him. We do something very similar here. where we spotlight something, effectively a woof toward it. And this might be a comic book, but it may also be a film or a TV program or a charitable initiative or a Kickstarter, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener, or in this case, viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your Wolf of the Week?
My Wolf of the Week is actually going to be a movie, and it's part of a long-running series that started back in 1987, I believe, with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and that is the Predator series. The new movie Prey, which takes place 300 years before the first movie in the Comanche Nation. I absolutely love this. It's available on Hulu on demand to watch it there. It was not released in theaters. And actually, if you're interested, they do have on Hulu a fully dubbed in Comanche version that you can watch and listen to it in the Comanche language. It stars Amber Midthunder, who I've loved since I first saw her in the first episode of Legion. She has just a great sci-fi pedigree, and in this, she is fantastic. You root for her. You believe her, you want her to succeed, and you also love her dog, too, which is a great story. If you ever have a chance to do some research around this, read the story about how they found the dog to play her companion. But it is the main characters are all primarily native actors. They do have non-native actors as well, but I'm not going to spoil too much for that. But I think how they show the predator and what the predator does when confronted with different types of prey is very interesting and a really great addition to the lore around this creature or this race of creatures. But also, I just absolutely loved the cat and mouse game and the hunter becoming the hunted, and just so well written of an action movie, and a lot of fun. So if you've got an hour and a half to kill, I recommend Prey.
I haven't watched it, but mainly because I haven't watched a Predator film in 36 years.
If you've never seen a Predator film, watch this movie.
Well, the thing is, though, but I've heard you're going to enjoy it more if you at least have seen the first film. That's what I've heard. So I want to rewatch, because there's parts of the first. I know I saw it. I remember who I was with, but it was a long time ago. So I do at least want to rewatch that first before I get to this. Yeah.
So, that's cool.
All right, over to the Wonder Cub. Caleb, what do you read? What's your Wolf of the Week?
I was just reminiscing on the first time I watched Predator, and Jesse Ventura made me gay in that movie.
All the men in that movie made me gay. Every single one of them, I'm like, yes.
It is bear candy, and I like it.
This is why you don't wear sleeves, Caleb. This is why you don't wear sleeves.
Yeah, no, like my sexual prowess is completely based off of Jesse Ventura with a dip in his mouth saying I'm a sexual Tyrannosaurus. Like that's who I am as a person. No, oh God, I'm gonna watch it this weekend. So my Wolf of the Week actually goes out to a comic that is it is a Kickstarter comic by some friends of mine here in Arkansas, some good old Arkansas folks who made good. And the comic is called Mechaton #2. This is being written by my really, really good friends. I actually officiated Dalton's wedding. But it's Dalton Shannon and Wells Thompson did the writing. Fernando Pinto did the illustrations. It's lettered by Nathan Kempf with the colors by Megan Casey and Fred Stressing. Long and short of this story, brother and sister, super cool friends. They live together, hang out. They're a little bit of slackers. They find a magic glove, a gauntlet, if you will. And the world is set upon by giant kaijus. And the gauntlet has a little power to it, and it turns them into a giant mech warrior that kind of takes on the elements of what's around them. So, like, the first thing they touch is a hot dog stand, and he turns into a giant hot dog stand mech. It's kind of amazing. And so this is issue 2. I actually just got it in. I just opened it right before the show, so I haven't had a chance to read it yet. But yeah, Derek and Leah, you're going to fall in love with them as characters. They're super fun. And the third issue is actually being kickstarted. I'm like, it's on Kickstarter right now, and I'm gonna go back it. You should go back it. It's a ton of fun. I adore these. I adore these people, and I adore this comic. And also something kind of cool. Looky, my name. My name is right there. I don't know if you can see it, but it's right there.
Oh, thank you,
That's my name.
Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
Yeah,
I second this.
I do have a question, Caleb.
It.
With the incentives, can you? Is there a level where you can get the first 2 issues with the third?
You can. Yep, they okay. are doing like it's with the second one, and you can actually get a copy of the first and second one. With the third one, you can get the whole package, and I think they're going to keep going like this, so you can make sure you have the whole series. And they, like depending on what you do, like they sent me a little handwritten note saying thank you. I mean, like that's in Wells' handwriting. I know it. You even get a little visit Steamy Palm Springs card with it, with kaiju and a little soup broth bath, drinking a few bevies there. So yeah, it's really, really fun. All ages book, 100%, and in the same way that Super Pets is all ages. Like you can be a grown person and enjoy it. No Jesse Ventura in the book, but that's just.
All right, my Wolf of the Week goes to a series of films. One of my favorite discount book houses is Hamilton Books, and they also sell home video, also sell DVDs and Blu-rays. And these aren't the easiest things to get a hold of. So when I saw these at a very low price, I grabbed them because they're region-free DVDs, so they originate from England. And the company is named Chrome Dreams. And they started off doing those, if you remember in the 90s, those really cheesy interview CDs where you'd have like Maximum Tool or Maximum Red Hot Chili Peppers, and if you when you open it, it's like a nice book with a really shitty quality audio interview, sometimes of somebody that's even just like remotely connected to the band. When they ventured into video, something different happened, and they put out some excellent documentaries, one of which I think is one of the best rock documentaries ever, which is Kraftwerk and the Electronic Revolution. They have a series of films they're very long in some cases. There's a series of films on Bob Dylan that are all over 2 hours. So if you venture into this world, you're going to get like 11 hours of Bob Dylan content. The narrator on a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them, is a British actor named Tom Arnold, who has a very distinctive mine is the last voice type of voice, which is very effective depending upon the subject matter. And I did pick up Strange Fruit, the Beatles Apple Core, Apple Records, which is details the record label and focuses on the artists outside of the Beatles that were on Apple Records, like James Taylor and Badfinger and Yoko Ono and Ronnie Spector and some others. And I also here have Metal Machine Music, Nine Inch Nails and the Industrial Uprising. Naturally focused on Nine Inch Nails, but goes through the history of industrial music. Covers acts like seminal acts like Throbbing Gristle and Cabaret Voltaire. If you've ever listened to this show, you've heard the name Throbbing Gristle come out of my mouth many
times. Do they get into Ministry? I can't remember.
Absolutely. They get into Ministry. They get into Skinny Puppy. They also get into the influence on far more commercial bands like Depeche Mode.
Yep.
In this, so I picked these up from Hamilton Books, but a lot of these films are streaming as well on some of the free sites like Freevee and Tubi and Pluto. So many of them are directed by somebody named Tom Odell. So if you search Tom Odell, a lot of them will come up. But there are some subjects, just because I love Tom Arnold's voice so much and that they are very well conceived. Even acts I have no affinity for, like Stevie Ray Vaughan, I just get swept up in the Rush, for that matter. It's too. There's a very lengthy documentary that they did on Rush that goes up to moving pictures.
It's still 2 minutes shorter than their songs.
Yeah. But I think all these films are very well done. I worry because there hasn't been a new film since 2020, and the website's been down for about 7 weeks. I'm hoping that they're not a victim of the pandemic. And it was also interesting because they did branch out outside of music and had documentaries on Manson and the rise of superhero films and on Banksy and underground art. I've universally have enjoyed their films across the board. So Chrome Dream Films, you can go to Hamilton Books, and some of them you can get on home video, but there's a lot that's streaming, and that is my wolf of the week. Cool. Just like it did with classic albums when they started taking some of those down. Yeah, but this is a very effective series, all unofficial, but at the same token, these are about as well executed as an unofficial film can be. Excellent. Thank you, Krypto, for joining us. I do have this vision of Caleb, sending, some other fella into space and saying, "My toy." My toy. But, if you've been tuning in, watch Sandman, go see DC League of Super Pets. You will not be upset in heeding our advice. They're both wonderful, wonderful pieces of media.
Before we go, James wanted to mention that he is just super jealous of Bill's superpower
James,
vehicles.
From what I understand, McFarlane is very good about international distribution with a lot of his stuff. These are, and what the figures are currently Walmart exclusives in the United States and Canada. I believe, according to their timetable, October, it expands out to other parts of the world. So, be on the lookout for those. I've been following the superpower stuff very, very carefully because these have been available in areas like the Pacific Northwest and the Southwest for a little while before ours. And when I finally saw them in the stores, I was happy. So I do believe it's a staggered rollout. Hopefully there will be something on McFarlaneToys.com eventually. But right now they are retail exclusive. So, but yeah, it's wonderful to buy new superpower stuff. I'm so happy. I'm so happy, and it's like I'm kind of dying not opening them yet. I God, no, all my pets are dead. I'm upset
she's
now.
Just, she's wandering around causing some trouble, so I just wanted to grab her a little bit. What
would her superpower be?
I don't know. Eating poop.
All right.
She has.
She'd be kind of like Matter Eater Lad.
Herself. There you go. Yeah. She's also tried to teach herself how to use a litter box, very unsuccessfully.
Okay.
It's not just for treats, but it's also for trying to pee in, and she does not have good aim. So. I don't beagles.
Okay, so not Green Arrow, but Matter Eater Dog.
Matter Eater Dog.
All right,
for
cool.
Sure.
Until next. All right. Oh, I got to give the spiel. Very sorry about that. I almost was ready to just knock it off, though. But I'll do this. So again, thank you for listening in. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to listen to us, you can do so by downloading us through Apple Podcasts, listening to us through Stitcher Radio, or many of the other podcatching platforms. If you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. If you've been watching us through the live stream, thank you very much. You can also see this after this is done on our YouTube channel. Please leave a review there. We would greatly appreciate that. So until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
You're going to hear a woof and an explosion. We'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Woof.